Welcome to the Part A's channel. Today we explain Genesis chapter 25 in a clear and simple way, step by step. Now, you might be wondering why this particular chapter is so absolutely crucial to the biblical narrative. Well, it's because this chapter serves as a profound bridge. We're literally witnessing the end of one monumental era, the incredible life of Abraham, and we're stepping right into the tumultuous, conflict-filled start of another. It's a chapter full of endings and beginnings, of death and birth, and of a fateful split-second decision over a simple bowl of stew that's going to shape the entire course of history. Before we jump into the very first verse, let's get our bearings and establish exactly where we are in the story. Abraham, the great patriarch, has already completed his immense tests of faith. His wife Sarah has passed away and she's buried in the cave of Machpelah. His son Isaac, the child of the promise, is now married to Rebekah. So the stage is completely set. We're in a massive season of transition where the family legacy, the wealth, and most importantly, the divine covenant are preparing to pass to the next generation. Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. First, we'll look at Abraham's final days. Second, the line of Ishmael. Third, the birth of twins. Fourth, selling the birthright. Fifth, clarifying some key Hebrew words. And finally, we'll wrap up with some life lessons and a quick recap. We're going to take this nice and slow, step by step, right through the text. All right, let's dive right into section 1, Abraham's final days, covering Genesis chapter 25, verses 1 through 11. Starting with verses 1 through 4, we see that even in his twilight years, Abraham's family is still growing. Verse 1 notes that Abraham took another wife, and her name was Keturah. She bore him 6 sons, Zimran, Jokshan, Median, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. The text then goes on to list their specific descendants, folks like the Asherites, the Letushites, and the Luamites. Now, among all those names, Midian might actually sound familiar to you because the Midianites are going to play a huge role later on in the biblical text. For example, Moses will eventually marry a woman from Midian. But for right now, the big takeaway is simply this. Abraham is literally fulfilling the promise that he would be a father of many nations. So, here's the big question. How does Abraham handle this massive, blended family before he passes away? Well, in verses 5 and 6, we see him taking very deliberate, strategic action. He specifically leaves everything he owned to Isaac. Isaac is the designated heir of the covenant, period. But Abraham also deals fairly and smartly with his other children. While he's still living, he gives gifts to the sons of his concubines, referring to Hagar and Keturah, and he purposefully sends them away from his son Isaac, out to the land of the east. Why go through all that trouble? He's taking this definitive physical and legal action to secure Isaac's unique inheritance. By separating everyone while he's still alive and of sound mind, Abraham is literally preventing a future succession crisis or some kind of civil war over the land of Canaan. And that brings us to verses 7 through 11, the true end of an era. Abraham lived a total of 175 years. He breathed his last and died at a good old age, an old man and full of years. And the text says he was gathered to his people. Now, what's truly beautiful here is the burial scene. His sons, Isaac and Ishmael, actually reunite to bury him in the cave of Machpelah near Mamre. That's the exact same field Abraham had bought from the Hittites to bury Sarah. Despite all their past separation, these two brothers stand side by side at their father's grave. And right after this, in verse 11, we learn that following Abraham's death, God blessed his son Isaac, who settled near Beer Lahai Roi. The torch has officially, completely been passed. Okay, moving right along to section 2, the line of Ishmael, covering verses 12 through 18. We're clearing the stage here by looking at the fulfillment of God's earlier promises to Hagar and Abraham regarding Ishmael. We get to methodically walk through Ishmael's 12 sons, listed right in order of their birth: Nebaioth, Kedar, Adbeel, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Jetur, Nephish, and Kedemah. Now, these weren't just names on a page. The text tells us these men became 12 literal tribal rulers according to their settlements and camps. As for Ishmael himself, he lived to be 137 years old before he too was gathered to his people. Geographically speaking, his descendants settled in this vast area from Havilah all the way to Shur, which is near the border of Egypt. The text notes they lived in hostility toward all their brothers, which points to a long legacy of conflict, but it firmly establishes Ishmael as a great and sprawling nation, exactly as God promised. Now we arrive at the core conflict of the chapter. Section 3, the birth of twins, from verse 19 through 28. Verses 19 through 21 give us a super specific timeline to work with. Isaac was exactly 40 years old when he married Rebekah, the Aramean from Paddan Aram. But, much like his parents before him, Isaac faces the immense, painful trial of barrenness. What's so wonderful here is the specific action Isaac takes. He prayed directly to the Lord on behalf of his wife, and the Lord answered his prayer and Rebekah became pregnant. But wait, there's a catch. We learn that Isaac was 60 years old when the twins were born. Think about that for a second. That means they waited and hoped and prayed for 20 long years before this pregnancy finally happened. But guys, this is no ordinary pregnancy. Verses 22 and 23 describe some really intense physical distress. The babies are actually jostling, literally struggling together inside her womb. It was so severe that Rebekah cries out, "Why is this happening to me?" And she directly goes to inquire of the Lord. And the answer she gets? It's a direct, literal prophecy. 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. God is plainly telling her that the violent struggle inside her is a preview of history. She isn't just carrying 2 babies, she is carrying 2 future completely distinct nations. And totally contrary to the cultural norms of the ancient world, the older child is absolutely destined to serve the younger.
Verses 24 to 26 describe the actual birth, and picture this scene because it's full of incredibly vivid imagery. When the time came, sure enough, there were twin boys. The first one to come out had a really striking physical appearance. He was red, and his whole body was like a hairy garment, so they named him Esau. But immediately after that, his brother came out, and look at the specific action of the second-born baby. His tiny hand was physically grasping Esau's heel as he was being born. Because of this grasping action, he was named Jacob. And just as a quick reminder of the timeline, Isaac was exactly 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to them.
Fast forward a bit as we read verses 27 and 28, and we see these boys grow up and take completely diverging paths in life. Esau becomes a skillful hunter, a man of the open country. He's this rugged outdoorsman, very physical and wild. Jacob, on the other hand, is described as a quiet man, staying among the tents. He's much more settled, domesticated, maybe even more contemplative. But here is where a really tragic dynamic takes root in this family: distinct parental favoritism. Isaac, who had a real taste for wild game, loved Esau. He loved the food his son brought home. But Rebekah, who perhaps was closely guarding that prophecy that the older would serve the younger, loved Jacob. This deep division in the household sets up everything that's about to happen next. Which brings us to the famous climax, Section 4, Selling the Birthright, from verse 29 through 34. Let's really step slowly through this interaction, because literally every single word matters here. Jacob is cooking some stew. Esau comes dragging in from the open country, absolutely famished. Step 1. Esau demands the food, saying, "Quick, let me have some of that red stew, I'm famished." Step 2. Jacob sees a golden opportunity. Notice he doesn't just offer his brother a bowl of food out of kindness, he demands a heavy price. "First, sell me your birthright," he replies. Step 3 reveals where Esau's head is at. Esau says, "Look, I am about to die. What good is the birthright to me?" He's totally exaggerating his hunger, right? He's allowing immediate physical discomfort to completely cloud his judgment of long-term value. Step 4. Jacob insists on a formal guarantee. "Swear to me first," he says. And Esau does it. He swears the oath, legally selling his priceless birthright to Jacob. Jacob hands over the bread and lentil stew. Esau eats, drinks, gets up, and just leaves. The final sentence of this chapter is chilling in its finality. So Esau despised his birthright. He treated the absolute most valuable thing he owned as if it were completely worthless. Let's take a quick pause here for Section 5, clarifying Hebrew words. We need to break down the meanings behind these critical names. So first up, the name Esau. In Hebrew, the name is closely associated with the word for hairy or rough. This name was given to him strictly because of his physical description as a baby. Remember, the text said he came out and his whole body was like a hairy garment. So his name is just a very literal description of his physical appearance on the day he was born. Next, we have the name Edom. The literal Hebrew meaning of Edom is red. Now, there are 2 direct reasons he gets this nickname, stemming from the events in our chapter. First, he came out red or ruddy at birth. Second, and maybe more famously, when he came in from the field starving, he pointed right at Jacob's cooking and said, "Quick, let me have some of that red stew." That is why he was also called Edom. His entire identity becomes forever tied to his physical color and his impulsive craving for that red lentil stew. And finally, let's look at the name Jacob or Yaakov. In Hebrew, Yaakov literally translates to he grasps the heel. Again, this was given to him because of the literal physical action at his birth, where his tiny hand was holding right onto Esau's heel. However, the root of this word also carries a figurative meaning to deceive or to supplant. And we see this literal implication play out perfectly in the narrative we just read. Jacob literally grasps for his brother's place, capitalizing on Esau's intense hunger to legally extract the birthright from him. All right, let's bring it all together now. Section 6, Life Lessons and Recap. Let's zoom out for a second and summarize the literal narrative arc we've just covered today. First, we saw the closing of Abraham's monumental life and the definitive generational shift, as the covenant torch passes directly and securely to Isaac. Second, we learned that God's plan is revealed even before birth. That incredible prophecy given to Rebekah established that two nations were forming, and the older would indeed serve the younger. And finally, we saw how the earthly actions and choices of the brothers, Jacob's cold calculation and Esau's wild impulsiveness, began to literally solidify that divine prophecy in real time. So, what does this all mean for us today? The practical life lessons drawn strictly from Esau's literal actions are pretty profound. First, our actions have permanent consequences. An oath sworn in a single moment of weakness altered the course of Esau's entire family line forever. Second, and honestly most importantly, this chapter acts as a massive warning light. It warns us of the intense danger of sacrificing long-term, irreplaceable blessings for immediate temporary desires. Think about it. Esau traded a lifelong birthright, which carried massive spiritual, legal, and financial authority, for a single temporary bowl of stew, simply because of immediate physical hunger. He completely failed to recognize the incredible value of what he was inheriting. So, I want to leave you with a thought-provoking question to ask yourself today. How do our daily choices shape our future? In your own life, what long-term blessings might you be tempted to trade away just to satisfy a temporary craving? What will you trade for a bowl of stew? Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.